show it in your channel?
Yeah, it's gonna pop up. You'll see us. Make sure you probably want to mute your the Twitch audio or the YouTube audio so you don't hear yourself on delay. All right,
Oh,
so here we go.
here we go, guys. Oh,
Three, two,
GG.
1. Hey everybody, welcome to the GTRNexus Podcast. This is our second episode now. Today I'm joined by Yelladin,
What's going on?
the One,
Hey, everyone.
and Plain Simplex.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
All right, so today our topics are going to cover Nintendo's business practices, because I know there's a lot of people out there that this is probably a pretty significant topic on their mind. Anybody who has been a gamer or a video gamer or even a console gamer or even not a console gamer for a long time, that are probably aware of how Nintendo handles their third-party game development as well as their position on live streaming their games and just people trying to share gameplay from Nintendo games globally. So we're going to talk about that first, and then we're going to move on to the recently announced GTC 2017 event that happened. We have an article here on the site. There will be an article on the Nintendo topic later on, posted, I guess later this week, or if not early next week. But we're going to talk about Moore's Law and the changes that are happening in the technology industry and how that actually moves the gaming industry, and not just the gaming industry, but other areas too, like automation, cars, business, all that type of stuff. So we'll cover that, and then we're going to talk about gaming, of course, because GTRNexus, it's a gaming website, and that's one of the main major components. So we're going to talk about NIER Automata, because it is kind of in line with the previous article, the previous topic, and then we're going to talk about Tekken 7, because that's a pretty big name game that's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's releasing on June 2nd, so that's literally like a week and a half from today, or from the recording of this stream. But we'll end the stream on that, and then we'll take questions. If you guys have a question, just let us know in the chat. Yillian will be monitoring the Twitch chat, and I'll be keeping track of the YouTube one, and then we'll try to answer those questions. So we'll start off with the first topic here of discussion: Nintendo's business practices. So there seems to be a general opinion in the press world and also in the gaming industry as a whole, where people tend to either take a side. Either they love Nintendo or they hate Nintendo. And you usually have the third opinion, where the person is kind of like stuck in the middle. They can't really... They like Nintendo because they grew up playing Nintendo games as a child, and then they see how the company is now and how it's kind of like floundering while everyone else is kind of progressing forward. So I wanted to open it up to the guys here on the stream and get their opinions and their take on Nintendo and how things have been going with them. So what do you guys think?
I just think that since I've grown up playing Nintendo, from the Nintendo Entertainment System was the very first one cartridge. Then they had the Super Nintendo and so on and so forth. I loved Nintendo back in then because I was just learning gaming, played Super Mario a lot, played I don't know if y'all know Bubble Pop. I played Dragon's Warrior. I played all sorts of games with them. Loved them back then because they're just starting off, and it was like a lot of potential, or there's no problems with it. Now so much, they ruined one of my favorite games, which is Bayonetta. Played it on Xbox 360, and when I heard that they were finally making a Bayonetta 2, even though they weren't too sure about making it, when they finally decided to make it, Nintendo buys them and then forces it onto the Wii U. And like they were expecting people to buy a different system just to play the game.
So it's more of like they rehash, or they take they take an existing game company or just a game license or title, and then they rehash it on their newer system just to try to get people to buy it again, or
Yeah, they're trying to like pull people to them. Like they have their diehard fans that have grown up playing Nintendo like me. So for I'm no longer a diehard fan. I'm more of a they made this game that looks interesting. But if if they just if they didn't try to be too greedy with people that they're trying to pull in, because their audience are either older people that have been playing Nintendo since they were young, or new fans of Nintendo that have come through the years of Pokemon's upgrades from like yellow to gold to black and white, X and Y, and all those different ones that they've had since there. And I believe the latest one was Sun and Moon. They have those fans. Then they have Legend of Zelda, which is one of their iconic ones. And then there's also their very first character that they ever made, Mr. Game and Watch, who was also their first video game. But yet they're still trying to like grab at different things, or like I don't know if you'd say different genre, but it's not the same as what they're used to, or like their normal flow, I should say.
do you guys think that they put too much emphasis on Miyamoto and his games like the Zelda series and Mario?
Definitely.
Yeah. There's no argument about that. I mean,
I feel like every generation they get more narrow in their scope. Like each game generation is just less and less and more of Miyamoto. Like more Mario. Like it's like almost 8 Mario titles added to each generation. Hyrule Warriors was a step in the right direction because it was broadening the scope. I actually hoped that would open a door for all the different type of Koei Tecmo, one of them, Dynasty Warriors or Samurai Warriors like they had on the Wii before the Wii U. But so far, we haven't really seen any of that evidence in the Switch. The only thing that we're seeing is like that Street Fighter 2 remake that's coming out soon. But more IPs that are different from what you normally see. Like when you think of Nintendo, what do you think? Zelda, maybe Metroid, definitely Mario. And other than that, it's kind of like really niche items that they choose and pick. Like Smash Bros, you're bound to see on a new Nintendo console. But other than that, it's like, what's going to be on the Switch? Questions like that are always asked by people who aren't really hardcore Nintendo fans.
yeah, they don't seem to ever like branch out. From what I can tell, from what I see, they just have too many like regulations on developers on like having to buy a license to make video games for their game like consoles and things like that. So they put restrictions on developers and makes them not want to like make stuff for their console. And on top of that, they have a lot of like, I don't know, they don't seem to like try to keep up with the other companies. They try to just do their own thing. They just do what Nintendo does, which is Mario, Zelda. It's like they don't really care because they have their niche of players. So I guess they just want to keep those players happy, but I mean, those players are getting old, and I'm all tired of a lot of their stuff that they just do. It's like it's always the same stuff. There's never nothing new. You don't ever really hear anything amazing about Nintendo nowadays.
That's why I'm like really skeptical. I was really skeptical about the Switch launch, how they're like pretty much killing off their Wii and Wii U and their 3DS support to just fully go into this, which was like a blind jump in my opinion, because I guess they're like go big or go home or something like that. But they had very limited games that they came out with if they were doing a go big or go home. Like one of the games, Zelda Breath of the Wild, a lot of people have seen people play it on either Twitch or YouTube or watch random walkthroughs of gameplay on YouTube. But to a skeptical person, Nintendo just throwing a a rocket to like a blind chasm or something, hoping that something would hit, and then they'll get like an echo back or whatever. Like people would like it, but it was just an open world RPG, which is on a lot of other consoles and many other games. And then they made it a Zelda title, which is one of their like mascots, pretty much.
To further what Yillidan is saying, it's Breath of the Wild in any other circumstance, like if it was a full port release, like it came to PC, if it wasn't just a Zelda game, it'd be a great game. It wouldn't be the 10 out of 10 that Game Informer, Destructoid, GameSpot, and IGN gave it. It would be 8 out of 10 because there are stuff that it does need to work on. But because it's a Zelda game, it receives that high margin. So I think it is a good practice in some sense because people will be fooled into thinking a game is way better exponentially than what it is. So when Nintendo does do something great, it's seen as legendary instead of just, oh yeah, that's pretty good, I'm glad they did that, but they can work on this. Therefore, they're almost getting rid of criticism in that niche market that they have, to further what the one was also saying.
Yeah. So who do you think is Nintendo's core demographic? Who do you think they're targeting? Like their games are tailored towards?
Anyone who grew up with them, and anyone who's like under the age of like 15, maybe.
So it seems like there's a gap, right? Like there's they're going after the next generation gamer, but at the same time they're holding on to their original, like the basically the previous generation, almost like a whole different generation in the middle is kind of left out, and it's just completely overlooks Nintendo.
Well, I mean, it's kind of as though the games they're making, the people, like, they just grow out of them. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, it's like they're grasping at straws.
Yeah, it's like they don't. I guess they don't try to like gain an entire audience. They just,
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's kind of silly.
Yeah, I think it's like what Yillidan was saying in the beginning with Bayonetta, how they acquired that IP, that intellectual property, and then they just kind of like kept it stuck on their system with Bayonetta 2, and then now it's just locked in, or they take a franchise and they just mismanage it and it just dies off. Like
Metroid.
Like Metroid. I can only think of like, well, I don't know about Metroid, but
they haven't had a new Metroid in a while.
But I think that's their franchise, so they're still kind of, they have that. But like the only one good example that I can think of is when they acquired Monolith Soft. They're the people who made Xenogears for the original PlayStation, and then they made the Xenosaga trilogy on the PlayStation 2. So after that, they acquired that company, and they developed what's now the Xenoblade, or the Xenoblade series. So there was the Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii, the original Wii, and then they made Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U, and I'm pretty sure, I think there's Xenoblade Chronicles 2, the sequel to the first game, is going to be on the Switch. I'm pretty sure that's in development. I remember reading some article a while back, a few months ago, about that. So there are some, but see, that's kind of like the exception to the rule with them, where they'll have like this one instance where they have acquired originally it was a third party for Sony. They'll acquire that company, make it a first, or I guess, I don't know, maybe this is a second party developer at this point, because they're still left to do their own thing, but they're only stuck on Nintendo. So that's an example of one where they're successful, and then there's like a bunch of other ones where it just doesn't work out. So yeah, and the other thing too, I guess the last thing we'll talk about for them is how they make it very hard for people who live stream games for a living to live stream their games. And it just, I understand why they do that. They want to protect their intellectual property. They feel like if somebody watches someone play the game, then they're not going to go and buy the game. But it just leaves a bad image. It just paints a negative picture of Nintendo within their core audience. So I feel like that's still just not a good practice. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's why I think they shot themselves in the foot by the choice that they made.
They've shot themselves in the foot since GameCube, after GameCube.
That's an old man's opinion, but
Smile.
Going to the question, the practice, it happens all the time. Even in media, Fox does it all the time. They acquire IPs and they make them not produce any more content, so they don't have competition for what they already have in production. I think it's a terrible practice, but Nintendo's not the only one to do it. So if I were to say Nintendo was bad for doing it, it can be done right. I just think that they didn't do it right for that scenario, because didn't they do it with Sega too? And I believe there's another example, but it's not coming to my mind right now.
Yeah, like, well, the most recent one isn't Nintendo, but it was Atlas with Persona 5.
Yes,
not being
that's
able
the
to
one.
live stream that game. Which is kind of ridiculous because, in my opinion, I'm of the opinion that being able to live stream a game, it's free publicity for that game and the publisher. It gets their name out there. Like, imagine if some random indie game that's like $5 off of Steam or $2.99 off of Steam. Imagine if like all the top 20 or top 50 live streamers on Twitch and YouTube were all streaming this one game that was made by some one guy who made this game all by himself in his free time. Imagine like what would that do for that guy in terms of publicity. Like, now everybody knows this developer's name, and it just looks really good compared to Atlas with Persona 5, for example. I mean, we've been talking a lot about Nintendo, so we're not going to pick on them the whole time, but I'll use Atlas as another example. They prevented people from live streaming Persona 5 past a certain in-game day on the calendar in the game, which is it's bizarre. And now, because of that, they threatened to take down, to give someone a takedown notice, and then, so what happens is the live streamers don't stream the game. They're going to play it safe. I mean, occasionally you'll get the random guy who will take the risk, but all those big name streamers out there, that's why you don't see any Persona 5 streams, because of that. So it just looks really bad, and it just, now people who don't even know about the Persona series will probably never know about the Persona series, because instead of that game, people are watching other games like NIER or other single-player games that are being live streamed instead. So those games are getting the free advertising off of that. So yeah, I just think that it's kind of a bad deal for that company who engages in that practice regardless. Like, I don't think there's no real positive effect on restricting people from playing your game. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And with that, I guess we'll now move on to our second topic of the hour. We're going to be talking about the GTC 2017 press conference that was held earlier this month by NVIDIA, and the spokesperson for that was, of course, the CEO, Jensen Huang. So he talked about how Moore's Law, so for those who don't know what Moore's Law is basically, there's an engineer who worked for Intel a long time ago who stated that every roughly 18 months, so about a year and a half, the transistor density doubles and the effective performance and speed of the processing power doubles accordingly. So, and that trend sort of held true up until recently. So Moore's Law it was never really scientifically proven. It was just something that was sort of stated by observation, and now it's kind of dying off because we're reaching the limit of the current semiconductor processes that we have. So now people are going to have to start coming up with some newer technology to make faster and better machines and processors in the future. But that's kind of like bleeding edge technology. But so he talked about how that doesn't apply anymore, and the future going forward is with machine learning and improving what we already have without having to rely on traditional node shrinks and transistor density increases, which is what Moore's law effectively was. So in the article that's published on the site, you guys can check it out, those viewers or those listening. It talks about how AI, and a lot of this was all covered in the presentation, so you can also go and look up the recording of the whole thing. I think it's like a little over 2 hours long, so it's a pretty long presentation. But he talked about how there's a big push in the industry for AI, artificial intelligence, and automation. So how machines learn how to recognize patterns, whether it's a human's face, and they're able to distinguish that because traditionally machines are very bad at facial recognition compared to a human's ability to identify another person. So they're getting a lot better at that. It's a little bit creepy, talking about like Skynet sort of stuff was talked about, but overall,
you're saying that Terminator's right around the corner.
Pretty much. I wouldn't say Terminator, but I wouldn't put it that way.
It's the end of the world.
But at least like Brainiac from Superman is gonna become a reality at some point.
Ring, 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 ring.
I remember the old Terminator movies tying into like the birth of AI thing. They're like, we need to protect ourselves. So they ended up making an AI that would control the missiles. Then the AI pretty much made its own Terminators, like robot army, and just took over everything.
Yeah,
the kill switch, man.
Yeah, these things are all gonna need kill switches. Like, I remember when laptops used to have the little Wi-Fi switch on them, so you could turn the Wi-Fi off manually, because that's like a kill switch. And then they remove those, and it's like now you have to rely on software to turn off your Wi-Fi. So now if it gets stuck, and then but anyway, yeah. So data centers, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all these key themes here are kind of coming to the surface with this presentation by NVIDIA CEO, where the world probably, I want to say 10 to 20 years, in the next 10 to 20 years, there's going to be a lot of change. It's basically, we're on the dawn of the AI revolution, and that's going to be needed here to realize these bigger goals that you only really see in sci-fi movies, but it's like a lot of that kind of stuff, it's actually around the corner, so that's kind of cool. So what do you guys think about that, like how the world's going to be in 10 years due to the AI revolution?
Are we going to be in space yet?
Probably not.
Then we're going to be dead.
We got to take into comparison the evolution of everything, pretty much, because like growing up, I'm sure you all remember not having a cell phone attached to your hand. I'm sure you remember your computer being super slow, not even be able to load up a simple. Remember the internet didn't exist at one point? I don't remember that, but I'm sure somebody does. It's just that progression.
Dial up.
Yeah, I remember if somebody wanted to use the internet, you would have to use the 56K modem, and there'd be a dial tone, and then no one could use the landline phone in the house because someone was using the internet.
Up the phone, it would.
Yeah, because it's like it's like, so you try to make a phone call, you pick up the phone, it's like, who's playing StarCraft?
It was called the web.
So it's like,
then it was called the web, though, wasn't it?
Well, it's still the web, but
but now
that was dial-up internet. But it's like we've come so far, and that was only in like the late '90s, and now we're what? Like, that's not even 20 years ago. That was only like 15.
So 20 years,
15 years ago.
Let's think about this, guys. 20 years. Well, we'll probably have the Mars mission will be within the next 5, supposedly.
At least that's the plan.
That's the plan. Next 5 to 10 years should be Mars, and then AI will be developing within the meantime, which I'm iffy about. I mean,
Well, it's already shown a lot of progress, though. Like if they were showing the demo, like so like he gave an example of this AI they named Isaac over at Stanford University, and how there was a graduate student or a research, I don't know if it was a PhD student or whatever, he was like trying to teach this robot, and the picture on the website, that's actually what the robot looks like at Stanford. Physically, it looks identical. This is actually a computerized rendering of it.
It's like a CGI.
Yeah, this is definitely because
like, that doesn't look like the real thing.
But the real thing does look kind of like this, and it is being taught how to play hockey, and it is learning. So what NVIDIA did was they virtualized the robot in their server array, which is basically this DGX-1 supercomputer that they have. And with the use of these new tensor cores that they're going to use in their Volta architecture, which is going to be in their next generation graphics cards that come out next year in 2018. But they're using them right now in deep learning applications like this. So what they're able to do is they're trying to accelerate the process of AI, because it takes a long time to learn something. Like everybody knows how when you have to learn, like people have to spend they spend 15 years or 12 years of their life in school from K through 12, and then they have to go through like 4 years to get a bachelor's degree or something. So they spend roughly a little less than like 20 years of their life doing academic stuff to learn how to be a professional. So computers are the same way. Like they have to learn how to do this stuff. If they're learning some process, especially if it's a process that requires logical thinking, that sometimes you have to come up with alternative solutions that are not listed, like it's not sequentially like your answers are either A, B, C, or D. What if there's an E, F, G, H through Z solution that isn't written by the programmer? Like, what do you do then? Like if A through D aren't the right answer, then what do you do? So as an AI, they have to learn how to come up with the alternative solutions. So that's one of the things that they're doing. What they did is they took the robot, they virtualized it, so basically created like a Brainiac equivalent of it, and then they multiplied this Brainiac several times. So they literally cloned Isaac. I don't know, he never told the number of Isaacs that they cloned, but they were all then learning how to play hockey all at the same time, simultaneously, and they took the one that was able to learn successfully the fastest, and they took that one as the one that would become the real Isaac. So it's kind of interesting what they're doing. It's a new approach.
Scary.
It's a new approach to AI. So it's really like the new thing, because he talked a lot about self-driving cars, and he showed a demo. He showed what the infrared vision looks like. Looks kind of like night vision. So yeah, like using LiDAR, which is basically like a laser radar to see in front of it and all around it. So they're talking about how in the future, I don't know if it was him or if it was someone else that was also talking about it, that it's like humans driving cars will be outlawed because it's so much safer to have a robot drive you instead, or the car should drive itself because it can see all around it at all times, or something like that. They were talking about how they're just making comparisons. Obviously, that's a hard thing to believe right now. But if you look at it from like outside the realm of just from humans looking at it, it kind of makes sense to a degree. What do you guys think? Do you think that someday humans won't drive cars anymore? There won't be such a thing as getting a driver's license, and everything will be automated. Cars will drive themselves.
Well, I don't agree.
Well, there'll still have to be like some sort of identification that allows you to, like, I don't know if they'll go straight to completely automated. I think it'd be more like iRobot, where it'll be automated, but you could take control of the wheel.
Yeah, like a manual override.
I feel like, God forbid, it doesn't happen in the next 10 years. At the way progression, like say a crazy war happens or something, and progression just stops. Well, actually, war progresses progression, so it's gonna happen. It's just a matter of when. I can't predict.
It does until the end of the war. Everyone's got to pick up the scraps.
Yeah, I think.
But I don't know. I just, in my opinion, I don't even see the necessity for cars in the future because 2050, I mean, the population will be nearly double.
Hey, I want a flying car.
They'll probably do flying cars eventually, or just, I don't know, everything will be using like the metro system or like trains to save space.
Yeah,
for
because
roads and stuff.
that's a good thing you bring up. That's an interesting thing you bring up, trains, because when
Trains are technically already AI too.
yeah, there's a lot of, and even airplanes have autopilot mode, where the pilot actually doesn't do a whole lot, with the exception of when the plane is taking off, when it's landing. That's when the pilot is mostly involved in flying the plane, and other than that, it's really like steering the plane and making sure that it's
They're
not
already
off
making a
course.
robotic arm, that can assist pilots when they're not at the cockpit. They're already like having this robotic arm
Yeah,
thing.
but it's kind of like how cars have cruise control. But that's not. I mean, that is actually a form of automation, but it's not exact. It's basically a feedback loop. But yeah, like I feel in the future, self-driving cars is definitely going to be a reality. But again, it's going to be a lot of governments have to adopt it, and like there's going to have to be laws that are invented or interpreted. Like, let's say there's an accident or something, then who gets sued? The manufacturer of the car or the person who owns the car? There's all kinds of stuff that has to be worked out. So it's gonna be that those sort of things slow the adoption rate of these new technologies or these new ways of doing things. But when you think about trains, though, going back to trains, most people that use trains every day in metro areas like New York, subway stations, or in parts of Asia where it's just way too crowded, so it's impractical to have a car at that point where you can just get around on foot, plus using the train to get around everywhere. So it makes sense, like people who live in that environment, to them it's probably like it's a no-brainer that cars are just gonna eventually just drive themselves. Right, like because they themselves probably don't even know how to drive a car.
I hope it gets ironed out better than like the only train that I know that's had like multiple problems is like the bullet trains where it's going too fast. There's like a slight hiccup, and a lot of people lose their lives. I hope that it's not a problem if we go to automated cars, that it actually gets properly fixed. Like all the bug issues, they test it more than just like, oh, this is good enough.
Yeah.
Let's put this out into the public.
Well, yeah, like designing something like a self-driving car, that's orders of magnitude more difficult and challenging to do, and there's going to be so much more testing and debugging before it ever hits the market compared to like a video game, because it's just...
I don't know if you guys remember the second episode of Star Wars with the city. That's how I imagine the future.
With what?
With the flying cars,
hundreds of years.
Super tall skyscrapers. Skyscrapers probably as tall as the ones in Dubai.
Yeah, because if the population's so high, right, you have to stack everything vertically.
Buildings will grow taller because of the growing population.
And also we're trying to escape all the
more than like being built in cars. I feel like cars are gonna be like, I don't know, it might be a rich person's thing.
In my opinion, I think for the Cloud City, the buildings were so big because they're trying to escape all the trash on the ground. Like if we go up high enough, we won't see it.
That's episode 5. I'm talking about episode 2.
The point is still
yeah. But yeah, probably we'll see more of those maybe in the rural areas. Then, maybe you'll see manual-driven cars still in the rural areas.
Yeah, I kind of think that the urban areas are the ones that are gonna adopt automated cars way faster than rural. I think rural will be the last area where it's adopted.
The question is what's gonna happen to manual labor?
Yeah, that's the other thing too,
What's gonna
because
happen to all the jobs?
because
Everything will have to be information services, customer service kind of things, like stay at home, telephone jobs.
but
won't need any
what's
reason
funny
for
is
construction
how
workers.
you know how when you have to call support for something and you have to navigate through the automated menu, like press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3. That's already all kind of automated. So it's kind of like the system's already trying to figure out based off of your user input which call center to direct your call to. So it's already doing that. And it's not really AI because it's all based off of the user pressing a button and then it determines where to go after that. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Like if they can train, because a lot of this is gonna be robots helping surgeons perform surgery, robots fixing cars, robots fixing all kinds of stuff that's not really easy for a human to reach or get to. You know how they send unmanned spacecraft to explore whatever. So it's gonna be interesting because with AI, you basically have robots or computers that are similar to what you see in movies like Interstellar and that sort of thing, where they kind of have their own little quirky personality, but they still have their own limitations. They're not perfect. So
For our robots, I hope we don't go into like the Terminator phase, and more if we just like skip somehow to the Transformer era or something.
What?
yeah.
If we could make Transformers, that would be awesome. Or Gundams.
Okay, man.
Well, I think
we could probably go a little crazy with that.
yeah. Well, I think
You
now
are.
we can probably, that's a good segue into the third topic of the discussion here, and we're gonna talk about NIER Automata. So this is a game that was reviewed last week. Finally, it's been a long time coming for this game to be reviewed, but it finally has its review on the site. And it's another interesting look at what will happen on Earth, like once humanity basically either dies off and for reasons unknown, or gets replaced by androids. So what do you guys think? Do you think that could actually happen? With this whole thing, we're talking about AI previously. Like now think about it like way longer term, because we were talking earlier about AI in terms of the next 10 to 20 years. What about AI in the next 100 to 250 years? Like, then what, right? That's a lot harder to fathom, like how it'll actually be.
There's like a mental block.
Yeah.
It's
I won't
like
be alive by then, so
It's
I
kind
don't
of
have
hard.
to worry
Us-
about that.
us being human beings. There's only a certain amount we can care because we're all gonna be dead. Our children are gonna be dead.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean,
So-
who's gonna be 250 years old?
Yeah.
So I'm sure it could
Unless
happen.
unless the AI somehow figures out how to stop aging. I mean,
The only way that could be compelling in the way it will affect me is if I can become said AI before I die.
So you want to become a cyborg, android type thing? Or you want to become
Oh yeah, I
a
was
cyborg
thinking
or
about that.
android?
Cyborgs will probably be a thing. Like having robotic eyes.
Well, that's the thing about machines, though, because they can be designed in a way where they're modular, so you can replace the parts. So
What if they do like Avatar and they transfer your mind into the robot? Ugh.
we'll see. Then that gets into the whole realm of who's the real consciousness, because
I don't even know how that would be possible.
like if you transfer your brain's memories onto some sort of memory,
We
like
don't even understand consciousness yet, so we shouldn't even like.
that's gonna
even be
that
thinking
goes
about
into like a
that.
whole
I don't even know
different.
if we ever will be able to solve that because that's completely different.
Because then you'll have two identical copies of the same person.
Because then you're talking about,
And then-
I don't know, you're talking more than just like algorithms and programming. You're talking about chemicals and
The way I would imagine it is it would be still a different entity. No matter how similar, it's still going to be a different entity. Like go alongside the same like twins, for instance. They're not the same person, but there's going to be a duality at some point, even if it's the same consciousness. It's going to be different.
Now we're talking NIER again, kinda.
But you know, like if you clone, that's just a really weird thought. Like if you take your memories and let's say you back up your brain's memories onto a solid state drive or something, and then that becomes the brain of your android body or your cyborg body or whatever, and then you boot that up, and then it's like now there's the original you, the organic human, and then there's the other you, which is like has all the same memories, like all the way back to as far as you can remember, and they both can remember the same events, the same years they occurred.
They would be two different people, but they would be the same person.
From the point when that android equivalent is...
You would recognize that you're looking at yourself. And you would recognize that
I don't think you could do that, honestly. Like, if you actually were to wake up and realize that android... But it's not the same. Because there's always that mental block of the impossible. There's always going to be that. You're living in the realm of the possible. Say this is happening in our world where we're all common sense individuals. Okay, I'm willingly putting myself into another consciousness. Say that consciousness has a replica and appeal to look like me. It's still not me. That's always going to be in your head because you willingly did this, right?
NIER.
Yeah, this completely goes
into, so NIER.
This goes into the original NIER. Because that's exactly what happens. But without too many spoilers on the first game, so the second game covers that a little bit, especially, but then it has like the whole hacking part of it, which is just
the moment Plain Simply said replica, I was like,
yeah, that's like a keyword from the original NIER, the NIER replicants and the NIER gestalts. But
so what if then the human body, the organic you, wants his memories back? Oh,
well, he would still have them.
Well, I know. But
you basically cloned the brain's memories. So the original body with the original brain is still alive.
It's a machine. Is the machine considered a living being?
So I have a question on the scenario. Will that template be a blank slate? Well, if once you put your memories and everything in there, it's just that he's essentially you, right?
Yes.
Correct? In this scenario?
Yes.
So for there to be a conflict, you would have to be a dickhead, correct? Because if you were to see yourself, would you have an immediate like anger or something like that? How would you react?
Hatred. I hate myself.
I'd have a good time.
My machine self.
So conflict depends on how you are and how the AI, whatever you're implanting your memory to, the vessel will react. How your true self, essentially. So if you're a jerk, that's going to be conflict. But if you're just a person and you realize, oh, this thing has happened, you're going to go from there and the story will take on. But I don't think there will be conflict unless you're just an asshole. And there only can be one.
Would the Android version be smarter than the organic version?
Well, how would it be smarter? That was still this. You know, that's actually a good question because the processing power might be better. So the new you might be extremely fast at solving calculus problems. But
that would actually be a good thing.
But might have difficulties doing other things, like recognizing another person's face or something. That might actually take longer.
It also won't be able to think outside the box. It wouldn't be able to attain new memories that you, like the organic one would
because
have.
at that point you'd have two different individuals that have the same memories up to a certain point, and then they split, and then there's like now it's two different people that originally was just one person. So that's just really it's just really weird. It's just because then it's almost like there's no way for the original person to actually ever become immortal because their brain is still like unless they can somehow keep their organic brain from dying off, then there's really no way, right? Like Yeah, that's.
It'd probably be something like
You could always do the
Futurama.
brain transplant into an android.
And essentially kill yourself, correct?
Yeah.
No.
Your original vessel, correct? Like in that scenario that you just brought up, you're gonna get rid of your original body for the android or whatever that you're putting your consciousness into. Oh, okay. I like the duality one better because you stay alive afterwards. So you're pretty much making a clone of yourself. In that scenario, from that point on, I would perceive that the other thing would be a different thing. Because everything is a probability of how you react to certain things. I'm sure if you saw a scary movie, there's a numerous amount of outcomes that it could have went based on what you're feeling that day, emotions and stuff like that. So the empty vessel scenario, he's probably gonna act. You're not gonna be able to tell. It's based on what you are and what you were raised to be at this point. But in the empty, you're gonna kill yourself and put it into AI. What are the benefits of that? Like the acclaimed said, or what are you, Bren on the podcast? Yeah. Okay, Bren said he was AI will be doing better at math, but it'd be hard to recognize. But do you keep your consciousness in that scenario too? Like when you kill yourself in that scenario, do you keep the processing power or whatever, or are you just yourself in that?
Well, I think you'd still be yourself.
I think you'd still
when
be.
People die, you can still bring people back to life within a certain amount of time.
Yeah, you'd still be. You'd still have your own consciousness. There just may be differences in how quickly you can process certain
what just
thoughts.
Happened.
Yeah. So it's just a really weird thing to think about because it's just so not. Yeah, it's. I think
medical advances are already trying to do like head transplants, which is weird. Just thinking about that. So how are they gonna get the guy's brain? They're obviously gonna use cryo and freeze the head, obviously, before they
who would be willing to be the first one? Who would be willing to be the first patient?
I don't know. Anyone who's got terminal illness, I guess.
Yeah, it'd have to be someone with a terminal illness that doesn't have a lot of options.
Who's on deathbed. Or an inmate, I guess, who has nothing else to live for. I don't know.
I was speaking more local. Which one of you would want to be the first?
I wouldn't do that. You crazy? You crazy?
Just curious. I had a feeling that somebody would say yes.
Malcolm.
Okay, guys. Well, we're gonna move on now to the final topic here. So now we're gonna talk about Tekken 7. This is gonna shift gears quite a bit because now we're just gonna go all gaming talk. So there are a couple of articles on the side. There will be more coverage on Tekken as we get closer to release. So the game's coming out in a week and a half. I did a stream the other night. The previous stream, actually, before this one, was on going over the older Tekken games and showing the different mini games that Namco put in there. So what do you guys think for Tekken 7? Do you think that Tekken 7 can maintain or expand the fighting game genre? Because it's kind of, a lot of people have been trying to say that it's going to die off, like the fighting game genre is not going to survive compared to a lot of other series. They were saying this back when Tekken Tag 2 was coming out. But I don't
know how that's possible, but okay.
I want to know who said that. I'm gonna take the floor on this one because here's why Tekken 7. Okay, here's why it's gonna be a better game. Tekken Tag 2 came out on an arcade system type platform. Like the platform it came out for originally was an arcade machine, of course, following tradition. It was on the Namco System 6.3. It was pretty much built on a PS3 type format. But this one, it is Unreal Engine 4. The roster seems balanced already because it's following the same tradition. So it came out in 2015, technically. Tekken 7 has been out in Japan since 2015, February, I believe. So that's 2 years ago. So by now, if there's bugs, if there's a day one patch, I'm going to be utterly disappointed because they had plenty of time to get balancing, get characters fleshed out, make sure there are no bugs and glitches. It's been out for years. I've seen it in tournaments. It's looked great. So right now, this is the best time to release it. June. Comes out, everybody plays it. It's on PS4 and I believe Xbox One for the first couple of months, and I don't know when PC is coming out for Tekken 7. It might be a little bit delayed, I'm sure. But here's why I don't like that fighting game will be dead argument, because Street Fighter V, even though the story mode was trash, still did well in sales. King of Fighters actually did better than I thought it was, because I don't actually know numbers, but I know it did way better like on Twitch and stuff for the first couple of weeks it was out, and it did have a couple of tournaments for it. And another thing, in Houston, I don't actually watch cable too much, but I actually saw a fighting game commentary with people like Tasty Steve and commentators on television, like on I think it was ESPN2 or something like that. So it is almost as big as the esport as some of the smaller MOBAs like Dota 2, not the big ones like League of Legends and stuff like that. But I think this is like the best period for fighting games almost ever. And I got a couple arguments for saying that, but I'm gonna leave off and let somebody else take the floor.
Okay. What about what do you guys think? Like Yilin, and like what's your input on this? Because you don't play a whole lot of fighting games, so you're probably not as knowledgeable as Plain Simplex is on this topic. But like, what's your opinion of fighting games in general? Like, do you think that the statement made earlier that the fighting game genre is a dying genre and it's gonna die off in a few years, or do you think that's true, or do you think that's completely?
I don't think it's gonna die off, because there's always gonna be diehard fighting game fans. Like, just because someone says one thing doesn't mean it's gonna be true. The only way it'll die off is if they made a genre that could take away people's attention from fighting games. Like, if they change, like, can't think of a genre that could crush it, because it's its own way. That I need to collect my thoughts on this one.
Yeah, it has its own. I see your point though. It has its own fan base. It has its own following competitively in the esports scene. It's well established. It's been around for a long time. It's not like it's a new genre of games like how MOBAs were new. Well, I mean, even MOBAs have been around since like the early 2000s with Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne, but it's older than that. Like they go way back. Like since I think the original Tekken came out in 1995. So they've been around for a while, and even like with Street Fighter and the other series like Virtua Fighter, there's so many different ones. And then there's the other 2D fighters besides Street Fighter, like Guilty Gear and Blaze Blue and those other ones. But
there's also the Mortal Kombat series.
Yeah, the Mortal Kombat series.
Mortal Kombat is still going pretty decently strong. It came out the original in like early 90s, late 80s.
I just think it's too broad of a genre to say something like that too, because you also have the three-dimensional fighters like Xenoverse and whatever else they come out for on console, and Justice 2 also from NetherRealm, which is Mortal Kombat's producer. Yeah. So it's a lot of it's doing well. I don't get why a comment like that would even be made. Like maybe circa 2009 when Tekken 6 was not doing well and it was like a little drought. You didn't see too many 3D model 2D style fighting games. Like the era before Street Fighter 4, I believe that might have been a concern. After Street Fighter 4, and you actually see people pay for the updates like the Ultra Street Fighter 4, the Super Ultra Street Fighter 4, Arcade Edition. Everybody who was a fan, they bought every update. I don't get why some other ones like Virtual Fighter, I can get. If you play a Virtual Fighter game, you'll probably understand, oh, wait, fighting games might be dying because those games are awful. But if like you have a good game, a good well-balanced game, like some of the Tekken games, which have a long lifespan and a dedicated following, I don't see how a comment like that could be made and be justified.
Now, if they said fighting games that would turn into movies, or the movies about fighting games, I could see that dying off. I wish it would die off. They're all terrible. But I've yet to see a game that was a fighting game that was turned into a movie be good.
Like the Mortal Kombat ones?
Oh, yeah, Mortal Kombat was terrible.
We're not gonna talk about
fighting games to movies. I thought you were talking about movies to fighting games. I was like, wait, what?
Oh no.
Well, I mean, in either or circumstance, I don't think it works. Yeah, those scenarios, I completely understand that.
They should just stop trying. from Street Fighter, Dead or Alive, Tekken,
Oh, I remember the Dead or Alive
any
one.
fighting game that they've tried, it's been terrible. Anyone that says otherwise is just lying to themselves, and they need to stop. It's painful.
There's always gonna be a fan of something, though.
You know what I'll say. What I'll say about
I guess
the
fan
comment.
of terrible crap.
It's all subjective, my friend.
The comment about the fighting game genre dying in a couple years. So I think that comment's made. It's said more often in the West because of how fighting games started in the arcade and how the arcade scene died off. So that kind of left the few random, I guess the CC's Pizzas or whatever, who still have like the Tekken 3 machine in the back with whatever other machines they have, or like you don't really see them that much. And then there's also the fact that fighting games it's really just it's a one-on-one type of game. Like there's a story mode, yes, there's a single player mode, you can fight the AI. We're talking about AI, so AI might get a lot better. Who knows, AI might start showing up in tournaments someday, but that's a different topic altogether. But it's like it's a one-on-one type of game. And now there's like all these newer games like the MOBA genre that took off back in like 2009 or whenever League of Legends came out. That's when it really started pushing forward, when people stopped playing the original Dota and quit and stopped using Frozen Throne. And how those games are more like team focused, so it's not all about the one guy who's like the best guy at the game. It's the team and it's the people and how they interact and how they become victorious over another team in the tournament scene. Now Tekken does, like in Japan and Korea and in the US, but to a much smaller degree, they do have the team environment, but it's not like you can all be fighting in the game at the same time. The only exception to that would be like Super Smash Bros. And that's why but even then Super Smash Bros. Is still mostly like a one-on-one in the tournament scene. But you know what I mean? Like I think that comment was made because when people think of fighting games, they think of Heihachi and Kazuya or Ryu and Ken fighting one-on-one, and that's all it is. Or they just think of like people button mashing the whole time and then getting bored.
We gotta keep this objective. We gotta keep it with 2D fighter to 3D, 2D format fighters, because there's a lot of arena brawlers that are also in the fighting game genre. That's why we have to actually correct ourselves when we say fighting games, because it's such a broad genre. That's like saying adventure games are obsolete or something like that. So I get the sense, like arcades were a big major source of finding arcade games, like 2D fighting games, because that was probably like the only place you would find them before they came to console and became a major thing. In the case of Tekken, which is one thing I don't like about the franchise, is they always release it in arcades first. It's understandable that Japan will get it first. It's understandable that Korea will get it first. Australia gets the arcade machine before United States. We had a couple, then they took them back. Then we got a couple, then they took them back. Then we finally have some right before release, but it's been 2 years. I've been seeing people in Korea play Akuma in Tekken. It's been driving me crazy. One benefit is the balance changes and everything like that. But those are practices I don't like. And that's also an old practice. Like going to the arcades first before your console consumers, it's kind of ridiculous. And that does put people who are new to the game, like, oh, I see the game on TV. Why can't I play it now? Who have not played it before. Like a person who wants to play a MOBA for the most part, it's free to play. They download it, they play with their friends, they play now. A game like Tekken, they play by themselves, so they already feel like a weirdo because I'm sure many of their friends are not going to be interested. That's one problem with liking a fighting game. It's in the minority, and I do get, in that sense, why people would assume that those games are dying.
It certainly takes a lot more technical skill to master.
Yeah.
You gotta get all the inputs down right.
Yeah.
There's a lot more mastery involved. I don't know. It's not gonna die. There's no way fighting games can die. It's part of human nature to fight.
It just seems like it's in the general, like in the general gaming audience, it just seems like it's become like a niche type of genre where you kind of have to be a hardcore person who plays either a 3D fighter like Tekken or a 2D fighter like Street Fighter, compared to just some random casual person. Because think of it like this: if think of like League of Legends, how many casuals play League of Legends that aren't even that good at the game, but they'll play it because their friends play it, and because it's a team sport, they can have their friends carry them the whole way, right? Like they can just kind of hang back, and then when they tell them run back, they run back, and then they just go in when everyone goes in, and they either randomly kill somebody or they get killed themselves. And that's kind of like how it is, and then they just have random fun the whole time. So it's like with fighting games, it's not the same. Like because it's so like it's a one-on-one focus so much,
you're not really there for the fun. You're there to win.
It still can be really fun though. Like if you watch live streamers who play Tekken on stream, it's actually very entertaining. When watching people who are really good at the game fight other people who are really good at the game, it's just as entertaining as watching high-level MOBA gameplay or any of those other type of games. But to get into it, like I would say the learning curve for fighting, to be good at a fighting game,
that's the turnoff.
That's the turnoff. Yeah, I think that's the thing that's making it hard for that genre to grow. Like, regardless of what type of fighting game we're talking about.
Another thing is taking blame. And one thing I find since I'm new to MOBAs is that it's very common to place blame elsewhere other than yourself, and when it comes to errors. So in Tekken, it's a one-on-one fight. Yeah. There's very little to blame. You can only go blaming a character being broken for so long if you want to do well. If you want to realize, oh, I should have punished that, say that. So that's what I find that's different in fighting games, is that you have to take the blame upon yourself. Like, if the game is broken, that's one thing. But 9 times out of 10, if you're losing and going down into ranks, it's probably your fault. Other people are not having the same problem. So it just is the amount of practice that you have to put in, the lack of communication, because 9 times out of 10, you can be playing by yourself, you can be playing online. And if you have the balls to have voice chat on with other people who are just trolling and not taking it seriously and beating you, it's a toxic environment in a different sense. Because in the mobile environment, they're going to single out one person on the enemy team if it's an all chat scenario. If there is no all chat, you're going to pick on somebody else on your team. So it's going to be toxicity no matter what you play. But Tekken, and Street Fighter, you're going to place it on yourself 9 times out of 10. And that's just a different thing that turns people off from a game like that.
Yeah, because there's immediate ownership based off of your performance in the game.
Yeah, because the rankings don't lie.
Right.
It doesn't lie. Like, yeah, there's unlucky moments, but if you're in the green ranks for a whole time you've been playing, and you've been playing for a year now, you probably belong in the green ranks. You need to head back to the practice room. There's scenarios like that happen.
Okay, well, Tekken 7, that's it, coming out June 2nd. I know I'll be playing it. We didn't even
talk about the roster.
Oh, yeah.
How are we going to close this off?
We'll talk about the roster real quick. We'll talk about the roster because that wasn't mentioned. So, we have the new characters that are coming out. What do you think? Do you think any of them? Well, we already know who the guest character is. I think people who've been following the game are already aware of all the new characters. I mean, some of them, in my opinion, are kind of like replacements to existing characters, like Master Raven, for example. Well, what do you guys think?
I think it's a bigger roster than I was expecting, because when it first came out in Japan, of course, it came out with like 14 people, and I was expecting it to kind of stay pretty slim because Tag 2 had a huge roster. So that's just like more people you have to learn how to defend against, how to punish properly with, who's the better character on the lineup, which version of the game you're going to be playing on by the time you get it. So it's just a lot of stuff you have to take in consideration. So, like, new characters, like they're bringing in Eliza, who was from
Tekken Revolution.
Yeah, they're bringing it in as a pre-order bonus.
Isn't that only for Xbox One?
I think it's a pre-order bonus or DLC.
I looked it up. She's a pre-order bonus for any platform.
for everybody else. Yeah. So she's gonna be annoying because in Revolution she was pretty annoying. So stuff like that I was not expecting to see in this title. Like new characters like Claudio, he seems really solid. The new female character, Kasumi Mishima. I assume her devil form is going to be in the game as well. I'm not sure if it's going to be playable. That's interesting though. Yoshimitsu looks different. Costumes look great. New moveset for different characters. Like Walrong has some of Bake's move, I believe. Jin looks way different. But as far as notation and stuff, I'm not really going to get into that. But a lot of new interesting characters. Josie Rizal is a replacement for Bruce. I think Lucky Chloe's she's like a cap fighter to me. She's like Eddie Gordo to me. So there's two of those. I believe they nerfed Eddie a little bit. They brought Bob back to the dismay of a lot of people and to the delight of some people. Both of the Bears are back, and they brought back Li Chaolan and his Violet counterpart. I'm not sure if they take two different slots or not.
Yeah, I hope they don't take two different slots because I think that'll be a waste. I think they'll do my thing. I haven't looked at the last time I looked at it was when they announced Eliza, but I think what they can do for Violet is what they did in Tekken 4. In Tekken 4, what they did was for the Bears and for Violet, and even for Xiao Yu's high school friend Miharu, they made them like alternate skins. So you would press a different button, like. I think if you wanted to play as Violet in Tekken 4 instead of Lee, you'd press triangle on the PS2 controller, and then that would automatically just queue up Violet instead of Lee. And then I think the same thing for Xiao Yu. If you press triangle, you'd get Miharu. And then for Panda, instead of Kuma, I think it was the same thing. So I think they could do it that way, but I know the Bears, they actually split into two separate slots, if I'm not
Apparently
mistaken.
they play differently.
Yeah.
That though, I have no intention of playing them. Playing against them is going to be annoying.
Yeah, I think Kuma is basically gonna be the one that returns in terms of like the original Bear fighting style. I think Panda's the one that's new, or significantly different from how the Bears used to play. I think Kuma's the returning one in terms of the fighting style. And then Gigas was actually in. I want to say he was in the bonus rounds in Tekken 6 or Tekken Tag 2. I don't remember anymore. But I know I've seen him before. And there were characters or like random enemies that you'd fight in Tekken Force that looked like him. So he's not really a new character. But
I have never seen him before.
Yeah, at least the design.
He's a Murdoch replacement though.
Yeah, he's the Murdoch replacement, but he's not really a new design. Like in terms of the new characters, I think the only really new characters are Kazumi, which is the boss, I think the final boss, and then Panda's fighting style. If it's significantly different, then they probably had to invent some new stuff there. Akuma, obviously. Well. And then I don't know how different Katrina is from.
Katarina is brand new. She's brand new.
Yeah.
Claudio's new too. Those are two new ones if we're talking about new people.
Oh, and the Arabian guy, what's his name?
Shaheen.
Yeah, he's new. Shaheen's new, completely new. So, and Lucky Chloe's
apparently
new.
They're all solid. They're all solid. Lucky Chloe's she's gonna be annoying as well. So get ready for that. And that's next week, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, launch date.
Yeah, June 2nd. So that's next Friday. So a week from this Friday. Which is kind of weird, because typically PS4, like console releases are usually like on a Tuesday, so I was expecting it to be on June 6th. I'm surprised they're releasing on the 2nd.
I think it's because the other release is coming out on the 6th.
Is the PC release coming out the same day?
No, it's pushed back a little bit farther.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah. But I don't know. I remember Tekken Tag 2 when it came out, and as far as I remember, there was never any bugs. The net code was really good. There wasn't a lot of lag.
Is Slim Bob gonna be in it? Is he gonna like costume?
No,
Bob,
unless he's like a different skin for Bob.
Who?
Slim Bob.
Slim Bob's not in the game.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Because a lot of those characters like Angel, Forest Law,
Dr. Boskanovich,
Yeah.
Mokujin's not in yet. They're probably all gonna be DLC.
I think Mokujin is gonna have to be put in at some point because he's the random one, right? Like every round, he's
every character.
Yeah.
I almost
And
forgot about
Combat's
Mokujin.
not in either.
Combat's not in for good reason.
Isn't he just a Mokujin on a robot?
Combat.
No, he's different. You could set up his movements.
Yeah,
differently.
Combat actually. So Mokujin was originally, I think, in Tekken 3, and he was just everyone. And then Tekken 4, they replaced Mokujin with Combat. Combat was basically Mokujin in Tekken 4, and then they brought him back in. I don't know if he was in Tekken 6. Tag 2 he was brought back, but he was different. Like in Tekken 2, I mean, I really like what they did in Tag 2 with Combat. Just how they allowed you to customize his style. I thought that was cool.
If it was more in depth, I think it'd be better. But I did like what they were doing, and I do like the direction that it looks like they're going with the story. It's like a little bit of the scenario campaign in 6, but it looks like they made it more akin to the Jin story that was in Tekken 5, I believe. So it's a little bit better fluidly in combat from what I've seen. So hopefully it's going to be entertaining, but we all know we're going to be on multiplayer hardcore. And because you're going to be able to set up tournaments with just random people now, you don't have to actually wait for, I don't know how the system works, but I just know that they explained it. I listened to it. It sounded great. So if you want that news, it's going to be on the site eventually.
Yeah, and I think for competitive play, what they should do is they should create the team set up online. So you would accumulate points. Like you could let's say it's 3 versus 3, and then like all 3 fight their corresponding opponent simultaneously. So like you go in match 1 and then match 2, match 3 are all playing at the same time. So you guys don't see, depending on how long the matches take, you don't see who wins and who loses until you're done with your match. Or I guess they could give you a notifier. I think something like that would be cool.
I think this game is going to do a lot that's going to help team play. It's going to make it more multiplayer friendly because I think every company realizes everything needs to have that. A community, a way that you can interact with friends if they're not online, meet new people, play with them, troll them, etc., etc. Without that, you're going to be lackluster like the Nintendo Switch. Oh yeah, we went full circle on that one.
And with that, I guess we're going to call that a wrap. So for those watching on Twitch, you can check out our website at GTRNexus.com. Same thing for those on YouTube. I know we had a couple of viewers on YouTube. Nobody asked any questions. I guess I should have reiterated that you guys could ask questions. You don't have to wait till the end, and we'll answer them here live. So if you're interested in following us, you can check us out at GTRNexus.com. Our YouTube channel is Game Tech Reviews, and for now, the Twitch channel is The Acclaimed at Twitch. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.